Tuesday, June 29th. We're doing a hybrid meeting today. There's three Select Board members in the room, and we have Selectman Barrett and Selectman O'Neill joining us via Zoom. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first up, we have a public hearing for a transfer of an all-alcoholic beverage license and change of location from Foo Restaurant, DBA Asia Treasures Restaurant, to Gayan Walpole Inc., DBA Sakura, 691 Main Street.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing as referenced by Mark Gallivan.
I'll second that. So because we have two members on Zoom, we have to do a voice vote. So I'll start with Nancy.
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Mark, aye. Welcome.
Oh, good evening. My name is Chris Coleman. I'm the attorney for the applicant. As you mentioned in the opening and in the legal notice, this is a transfer of an all-alcoholic beverage license from current location at Asia Treasure to Sakura, which is a currently operating restaurant with a beer and wine license currently. So they're going to be looking to get the alcoholic beverage, all alcohol. Just a little bit about Sakura. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it. 2,000 square foot space, 48 seats, 48 occupancy, Asian cuisine. They do takeout as well, and they serve sushi. The hours are going to be unchanged. The menu's unchanged largely, and the seating capacity is unchanged. Also unchanged is the manager. Andy Wang is sitting next to me here. He is the current manager. Will continue to do that. He's been at that location for this last year. 5 years prior to that, he was at another Sakura in Attleboro. He's the manager there. He is a U.S. citizen. He's TIPS trained, and will be there 40-plus hours. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Eva, you happy with all the paperwork? Do any members of the Select Board have any questions or comments to make?
You go first.
So do they have a bar? Do you have a bar?
No, there's a sushi bar left there, but it's not an alcoholic service bar.
Okay. And what are the hours now?
What do you have? What are you open for? 4:30 till... When do you close?
What time?
What time do you close? What time do you open? What time do you close?
Okay, we open 11 a.m. to we close 9:30.
9:30. That's all.
Thanks. Nancy?
No, I just wanted to, well, first I just want to ask, are all the paperwork is in order?
Yes, everything is in order.
Okay, and then I just want to say congratulations and thank you for investing more into Walpole. And I did just want to say that it is sad to see that Asian Treasures ended up closing. You know, we have lost a few restaurants and it's very sad. But, you know, good for you to be able to expand, so. That being said,
Let me just go to Jim. Any questions?
Nothing from me, Mark, thanks.
Ben, any questions?
No, thank you.
Nancy?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark? Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer request and change of location with the condition the wine and malt beverage license currently held by Gain and Walpole Inc. is surrendered to the town once final approval has been received from the ABCC.
I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Ben?
Ben?
Ben, I'm sorry, what did I say? And again, sorry about that.
Aye.
And Mark, aye. So you're all set.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We're a few minutes early. I'm going to wait till 7:15 for Brian because I believe he's dialing in. How about are you the auto dealer? How about can we jump to that? since that's not a hearing, so
We're all set.
we can do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a vote request of Dan Iotti to amend the Class 2 dealer license for 1A Auto Sales located at 1391 Main Street and Walpole Auto Sales located at 1449 Main Street. Eva, are you happy with the paperwork?
Yeah, so we did go to town council on this, just to check if amendments can be made to the licenses, and they were fine without public hearing for amendments to be made, as long as the conditions remain the same. They get attached to the property, not the license itself. So whatever for the storage of the vehicles at either address will remain the same, no matter what the name is on them.
Okay, why don't you just introduce yourself, just for the vast viewing audience at home?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dan Aldwahi. I've been in Walpole all my life, well, actually since 1997. I went to Walpole High School. I've been running a dealership in Walpole since 2007, and just growing. You know, live in this town, I work in this town, and I sleep in this town.
Great. Let me see if anybody has any questions. Glenn?
I don't have any.
Nancy?
Nope, just excited. that
Jim?
you're
Thank you so much.
No, I'm good. Thanks, Mark.
Ben?
No, thank you.
And I don't have any questions other than just, congratulations, and hope things continue to go well for you.
I appreciate it.
Nancy?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to amend the address of Class 2 dealer license for 1A Auto Sales to 1449 Main Street, and amend the address of the Class 2 dealer license for Walpole Auto Sales, 1391 Main Street, with all the property restrictions and conditions remaining.
I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Mark? Aye. You're all set.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good luck, have fun.
Thank you, guys.
Just trying to see how much time we have. We've got a few more minutes. He is, okay. All right, so we're going to start, we have Brian Jarvis, Compass Project Management, with an update and discussion on the middle school project. We're expecting to vote to endorse the schematic design report submission, which is going to go to the MSBA, and we anticipate voting on the length of the middle school project borrowing. So, welcome, Brian.
Hello, thanks for having me. And you folks, can you see my screen? So if I share the presentation, it should have been in your packet as well.
We should be able to see it, yep.
Okay. If you're ready, I can go through that now.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right. Hello to the board. Brian Jarvis, Project Director for Compass Project Management on the middle school project, with a brief update on the schematic design report, which is the next deliverable due into the Mass School Building Authority, the MSBA, that is due into them by July 7th, in line for a board meeting with the MSBA at the end of August, on August 25th. So I'll give you a few updates of where the project is currently, and then answer any questions that you might have. Quick overview of the timeline, deliverables for schematic design, updates that we've made during schematic design, where the cost estimate is at this point, and what the next step is regarding the MSBA and their funding process. Just a high-level timeline, we're creeping up on July 7th, which will be the end of schematic design. We'll submit that report to the MSBA. Between July 7th and the end of August, we will be meeting with the MSBA on several occasions as the town and the district to come together on a scope and budget agreement. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. And at that point, get to a point where the MSBA locks in kind of their agreement with the town as far as the scope, budget, and schedule for the project. They'll vote that at the August board meeting on August 25th, and that is the information that then will be presented at town meeting and placed on the ballot. And there'll be a lot of public information sessions between August and town meeting, obviously. Leading up to schematic design, we've held numerous community forums online, virtually through Zoom. We've had 5 through schematic design. We also had a handful earlier in the process with some of the school parent groups, just to get them up to speed on the enrollment options and some of the early educational programming questions and topics as part of the design. And then after town vote, if the project is approved and moves forward, we enter into full design for approximately a year, anticipating a start of construction towards the end of 2022. Schematic design deliverables. So there's been 2 main submissions from the project as far as design goes to the MSBA to date. We did the preliminary design program back in November, which is really a high-level look at the educational plan and programming for the school, looking at existing conditions, looking at all the potential options. We then narrowed that down to the preferred schematic, so the chosen option by the building committee. That was submitted to the MSBA at the end of February, got through their reviews in March, and it was formally moved into schematic design in April. And then schematic design is what we're currently working on and plan to submit. And schematic design represents about 30% of the total design. Still somewhat at a high level, but a lot of the systems have been defined through narratives. We do have some detail on the building as far as types of finishes, quantities, things of that nature, but we don't necessarily have specific details, regarding them, particularly brand names or exact quantities of every little detail. But big picture enough to be estimated at a pretty thorough level. It also includes a lot of information that was previously submitted and just updated for schematic design regarding the existing site. They take a look at the code analysis of what code requirements are in play with the building, sustainability elements, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, access, room data sheets, project delivery, which is the construction method, whether this is going to be a bid project or a construction manager at risk. And then the 3 or 4 main parts of schematic design report to the MSBA are the construction cost estimates, how that reflects into the total project budget, and then working through the max reimbursement from the MSBA, what that maximum grant might look like. For the MSBA, due to the volume of projects they have going through their pipeline, they did request an early submittal. The building committee approved that early submission, and that went in on June 23rd. We will submit that same information again on July 7th, along with these last few parts related to the budget. That'll go in on July 7th, and that'll be voted at the building committee meeting this Thursday night, July 1st. You've probably seen some of these images. To the left is the current schematic design site plan of the building with East Street to the left of the page, Washington Street to the right. This is the proposed new building, which was the B1 option selected from the original 19 possible options. The front of the building faces the baseball fields. There's access from Washington Street, a new access road from East Street, circulation loops and parking in front, which is where the current Bird building is. So the project will be built in phases. It'll be the new construction of the entire building. Then once that is occupied, demolition of existing Bird and finish of the site work in front of the new building where Bird currently stands. So there will be some temporary and phasing type construction that goes on during this project, which is not atypical for school projects. A lot of school projects are built on the same site and often very close to existing buildings. To the right is a 3D rendering, basically giving you an idea of what the outside of the building might look like. Obviously, color palettes and things like that have not been determined yet. This is just to give people an idea of brick and glass and entrances and what the building might look like on a massing scale. This is basically looking at the building from this corner here, coming in from East Street with the gym sticking out, and then the main entrance kind of in the middle, and then the classroom wings off in the distance over here. Floor plans, if you've not seen them, the building is broken into really two zones, an academic zone with 3 floors of classrooms, and then a more public or performing arts and athletic zone that also has a separate entrance. So you have the administration on the first floor, entrance to the auditorium, entrance to the cafeteria. The gym is on the 2nd floor with the 2nd floor of the auditorium accessible there as well, and also guidance in the library. And then over in the academic wing, you have 3 floors that basically mirror each other all the way up with potential to do a grade per floor, 6, 7, 8, or even a grade per tower, depending on how the school chooses. But right now it's laid out as a grade per floor. And it's also broken into the teaming structure that is part of that is the key component to the school's ed plan for the middle school. Basically 3 teams per grade, each with 5 classrooms apiece, so that the kids have a small school feel in a larger school, 1 team, 2 teams, and 3 teams basically per floor. So some key points about the update in general. The building is just over 162,000 square feet. That's actually down from approximately 189,000 square feet when they did the original programming of kind of like what's everything we want to throw on a piece of paper, what does that look like? They've really done a good job of making this building as efficient as possible. Within that square footage, that includes the 45 classrooms and labs to give it 5 classroom labs per team and 3 teams per grade. It also includes an alternate PE space. So there's a full-size gymnasium that can break into 2 half-court basketball courts, and also there's a 3rd gym space to provide some alternative physical education for either special education or other programs that they might have. It does include a central kitchen for the district, which is something that they think will be a benefit to not only supporting the district's needs, but also some of the out-of-district services that they provide, potential revenue stream there. It also includes a 600-seat auditorium with a stage that we saw. So it's big enough to hold 2 classes or 1 class with perhaps a couple people from home, which is a typical layout for an auditorium as far as sizing goes. We also noted earlier on the site plan the separated car and bus circulation loops to keep safety in mind at all times as far as pickup and drop-off times. It does include some overflow event parking, kind of above and beyond what is needed from a staffing perspective. So for special events or multiple events at the school, and it does include the new driveway out to East Street, which the project is moving towards as a way to help mitigate some of the traffic impacts of bringing the Johnson population to the East Walpole side of town during pickup and drop-off to provide as many options as possible for traffic. As I mentioned, the building is broken into community wing and an academic wing with separate entrances to help both from a security, but also from a operation perspective of not having to have the whole building open for different events, after hours, et cetera. From a sustainability energy efficiency perspective, the building right now is an all-electric building, which helps with greatly with energy efficiency and some of the planning towards some of the incentives that are coming from the state over the next several years. We are targeting an efficiency level that will get the town another 2% reimbursement points from the MSBA, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We're also targeting what's called net zero ready. So the building will be designed in a way that will have the insulation, the efficient systems, and the infrastructure for potential renewable energy, such as photovoltaics or PV arrays in the future, that at some point, as the district and town decides, that you could possibly get where over the course of the year, the building could potentially have a zero energy cost. You basically produce as much as you use over the course of the year. We're also targeting an energy usage index, EUI, near 25, which is the threshold that triggers a lot of the incentives that are out there through programs like Mass Save and Eversource that actually pay the town to move towards a more energy efficient. So they help as much as $2.25 a square foot in potential incentives as one of them for the project. And as I mentioned, photovoltaic ready. So the structural design of the building, conduits to the roof, room in the electrical rooms, et cetera, will be part of this project. So if and when the town decides to move in that direction, the building is ready for that. From a construction perspective, the project right now is estimated about 32 months of construction. As I mentioned, there'll be multiple phases: an enabling phase, the new construction of the building, and then the demolition and finish of the site work. That timeline starting possibly mid to late 2022, with the new building opening for school year of 2024. And then that would be the new building itself, the bird, and finish the site work, and then close everything out with the MSBA. And that would be sometime probably late 2025, but by the time we're talking about final reimbursement from the MSBA. Possibly longer, because that process does take a while. And right now the project is going construction manager at risk for a delivery method. So if the project is approved at town meeting, we will be procuring a construction manager to come on board during the design, basically to be a partner on this project through the design and then into construction, which will result in a guaranteed maximum price contract, or a GMP. You might have heard that term, which is an open book accounting method for construction. So that's some of the updates. From a design perspective and a planning perspective. From the cost perspective, in schematic design, we really get our first big estimate, so to speak. Initial estimates were more of a kind of a square foot look at the building at a very conceptual level. We did 2 cost estimates by independent estimators, one through designer, one through Compass. We reconciled those within 1%. The construction cost is estimated at $92 million, which is in line with where we were back at the concept phase. And total project budget, which includes construction, is estimated about $116 million, inclusive of all contingencies for the town. Again, in line with where we were back in February, and that's inclusive of the current market conditions as well as pretty significant contingencies for escalation and pricing escalation over the next year or two. So that's all baked in to these cost estimates. The projected reimbursement rate from the MSBA is 52%. The base rate for Walpole is about 48 and change, but with the additional incentives of those energy efficiency as well as the maintenance incentive based on the programs that the district currently has in place for maintenance of its building, we're getting another 3.5 points to get us just up over 52%. And as a reminder, that is just 52%. That's 52% of eligible costs. The MSBA looks at all costs on a project, and not all costs are deemed eligible. They have different caps. They have different categories of things that are ineligible right out of the gate, and that's not atypical on a project that's not specific to Walpole. So at the end of the day, what you end up getting is really an effective rate. You're 52% of eligible, but we're projecting that at the end of the day, that effective rate back to the town will be more like 30 to 33% of the total project cost. So 30 to 33% of that 116 million, not the 52. That equates to a town share of approximately 80 million. And then from a taxpayer's perspective, again, just to give them an estimated range of where we think things might end up, and taking a very conservative approach. I know you're going to talk about this next, but the average assessed household, assuming a 30-year level debt at 3.5% with no other variables included, like expiring debt, et cetera, it comes out to about $450 a year for that household, obviously a little bit lower or higher based on your assessed value. And the next steps, so once this goes in on July 7th, the MSBA will review that. It's possible that we will meet with their facilities assessment subcommittee, who we met with back at the previous deliverable, and they really kind of get into the technical details of the submission. Once all those questions are answered, we'll attend a project scope and budget conference. We'll kind of go through the whole submittal. We'll look at how the submittal is in compliance with MSBA regulations and policies, meaning square footage, what's eligible, what's not eligible, and then begin discussions on the estimated basis of that total facilities grant, which is, that estimated basis is really what the MSBA calls their eligible amount, right? They're going to apply that 52% against that eligible amount, which is not necessarily and won't be the total project cost. Once all those concerns are addressed, they will recommend approval, and they will issue a scope and budget agreement to the town, which basically spells out the scope, schedule, budget, and reimbursement rate that the MSBA is willing to agree to. And that is basically the contract that the town will sign with the MSBA. It's not a funding agreement, so that's important to note. Right now, we're working off the feasibility study agreement, which is the initial $1.5 million for this initial design phase. They will execute another project funding agreement after town meeting if the project is voted. And that will be basically the rest of the budget for the project. So after a funding agreement is approved, assuming a yes vote for the project, the town will then be able to begin the design process and then start submitting reimbursement requests to the MSBA to be reimbursed for those design costs and eventually construction costs. So with that, I will stop and be happy to answer any questions. I know it's a lot of information pretty quickly. And tonight, the building committee did review this submittal at the last meeting, and they're looking to vote this for submission at the Thursday meeting. We went to the school committee last Thursday and got unanimous endorsement for the project. And tonight we're just presenting to the board to see if there's any questions and to seek endorsement of the select board also for the project.
All right, so let me break this into 2 parts. Let's start with the schematic design. I'll go around the room in Zoom for select board members. I did want to let everybody know also in the room, we have Bridget Goff, Superintendent of Schools. We have Mark Breen, who's the chair of the School Building Committee. We have Bill Buckley with the School Committee, and we have Jack Fisher, a member of the School Building Committee. So if you can direct a question to one of them or Brian Jarvis. So let me start with Glenn.
So what's the other part? Schematic design and then,
Schematic design, then we're gonna talk about financing duration of 30 years, or whatever we decide.
would you mind coming back to me and starting with somebody else?
Sure, that's fine. Nancy, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Brian, I think it looks very nice. Good job. And the committee has done a great job. I know that there's been a lot of healthy debate throughout the entire process, which is great. One thing that has been brought to my attention, and I'm hoping you can answer, it was brought to my attention, Mark's attention, Jim's attention while we were at town meeting, and it's that driveway on East Street. I understand our needs for, to preserve the field, but what steps have you taken? I mean, I know there's been tons of Zooms and tons of information if you want to get the information, but there's also a bunch of people that don't even know that they need or want the information until it's the driveway next to their backyard or right across the street from the house. What have we done for the neighbors, and what has that back and forth been?
Hey, Brian, you're muted.
Yep, sorry. What have we done for the neighbors as far as communication, or what is in the design as related to the neighbors, or both? Just to clarify
Maybe
your
both.
question.
You want to know about the specific driveway or
Well,
communication with the neighbors, or?
communication with the neighbors and the driveway.
Yeah, so communication with the neighbors, we did have a meeting in early March when we heard about the concerns with some of the direct abutters. Kind of got their list of concerns and took it back to the team. We've had direct email correspondence on several occasions, answering questions, kind of back and forth between the project team and the neighbors that might have had questions. I know that Mr. Breen has reached out a few times and spoken directly with some of them. And we understand that there are concerns there. We're trying to address them as proactively as possible, with the understanding that, the driveway is part of the project. And I think that there are a lot of things that the project will be considering as part of the final design, and some of those details haven't been worked out yet, as far as potential screening or things of that nature that might block any views or things like that. And then from an operational perspective, I don't think the school has quite determined exactly, the total use of that driveway, other than pickup and drop off at this time. But we have met with other town departments, including public safety, kind of got their input on things to do, things not to do, type of information. So I think it's been an ongoing dialogue. We're at a point now where we've got it to this level as far as a schematic design, and then there'll be more dialogue as we move through design and start to get into some of those details of what that might look like and how it might operate.
So what's presented right now is not the final driveway placement or plantings or barriers or shielding?
It's the final placement as far as where that driveway is going to be, but as far as the details of what the plantings might look like, or if there's a fence involved and things of that nature, I think it's at a schematic level where a lot of that detail needs to be fleshed out as we move through design. But for instance, one of the concerns is safety of people using the field with a driveway right there. We understand that there's going to be some type of fencing between the field and obviously the driveway, so people can't just run onto the driveway, similar to a lot of fields in town. So that level is done, but exactly the specifics of that will continue to be added as we move through design.
And how did the neighborhood leave that? How were they feeling? What was your temperature of the neighbors?
I think that in general, they would prefer that the driveway is not there. But I think at the same time, I think there's an opportunity there for the project to continue to engage with them, and make the best of the situation. I think that's where it's at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Let me go to Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, and Brian, I'm just going to pick up on Nancy's question, because to her point, several of us have been approached by the neighbors. The concern that I heard, that I don't think I heard you address, was a question of where dumpsters are loaded, unloaded, and it was a concern raised to me that there might be dumpster trucks moving in that driveway. Can you talk about where the dumpsters are currently thought to be positioned, and how they'll be, how a truck will come in, empty a dumpster, what time that would happen, things like that.
Yeah, I will share that plan again.
Thank you.
So currently, this bump out here is the gym with the central kitchen below it, feeding the cafeteria on the first floor. And the plan is that this would be the kind of the receiving area for the school. And that this would be where they would take, any trucks for deliveries regarding cafeteria or whatever else might be coming to the school from I think from a food service perspective, office deliveries, WB Mason or whatever, most likely will use the front door. But that's to be determined, and that's something the school will decide. And a dumpster area, I think, would be somewhat in that location. But I don't know if we've gotten to that level of detail of exactly where that would be placed.
Okay, and as that, because it did come up to me, have you not heard that from the residents in your discussion with them?
I don't recall a specific question about where the dumpster was going to be located.
Okay.
But this is,
If you could
right
just,
now, that's the tentative location.
all right, if you could just carry that forward
Yep.
and make sure that that's, if it's not a concern, then terrific. I mean, and maybe at the time that the discussion was had with me, maybe the location of the dumpsters wasn't known. I don't know, but I just want to make sure we've addressed that concern. So beyond that, and Nancy, thanks for bringing that up.
Yep.
I think what you've got here is a very good design, first off. I like the process that's been followed here. It's been going on for a year plus, and I think there's been multiple iterations, a lot of discussion, a lot of input, and I really like the design that you've laid out here. One of the questions that does come into my mind, and I know will be a topic of conversation as we progress this forward, is the question of reimbursable costs. You mentioned that not all costs are reimbursable, so 52% of reimbursable costs is the rate we get, but in overall, when we look at the 116 million, it would be only 30 to 32%. And the reason for that is not all costs are reimbursable. One of the things that I've heard brought up multiple times and over again is the question of this cafetorium versus auditorium. And it's my understanding that that's one of the areas where there's, some question about, what does or doesn't get covered. And I wonder if you just spend a few minutes talking about, the current state of affairs at the Byrd Middle School with an existing cafetorium and the difficulty we have with that. Then think about that in a school where we've got twice as many kids now in it and trying to service lunches and whatever the auditorium thing does. And contrast that to, the real needs of this school in terms of, the requirements that have been defined by, the school board and the school committee, and how we think about, a modern auditorium, a modern cafeteria, and so forth, and just sort of explain why something may or may not be reimbursable, but I want to make sure people understand beyond the reimbursability is the real trade-off that exists here when you think about a cafetorium versus an auditorium. Can you pick that? Can you do that? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think I'll take a quick shot at it, and I'll probably defer to Dr. Goff for maybe some of the existing conditions. So from an MSBA's perspective, they don't include an auditorium in the program for middle schools. Maybe that changes in the near future, but currently it's not part of the program. They do for high school. They look at it, a cafetorium for elementary schools and middle schools. So yeah, the auditorium is not a reimbursable cost. So they look at that as an ineligible cost for a project. One of the things that the project did do with the district as far as programming goes is when you lay out kind of what you think you need for your program, as far as music, and Walpole does have a very robust music program. Initially, there was another music room in the project. Again, kind of over the MSBA guidelines as far as amount of space dedicated to music, et cetera. So one of the trade-offs was, eliminating that music room and using the stage for one of the potential classes that you'd have for an auditorium. So those are some of the ways that even though the auditorium is ineligible, you can kind of maybe offset some of that by reducing square footage other places that might have been ineligible as well. So that is probably the biggest driver of what's ineligible as far as the auditorium goes, is just the fact that the MSBA doesn't consider that part of the middle school program. Now, that being said, We have not done a middle school without an auditorium. A lot of districts do find it to be very favorable and supportive, not only their academic, but their extracurricular and also community events. So it's not atypical. So it's not something that Walpole is asking for that other towns do not. But as far as comparison to existing and what they could possibly do with the new space, I'll defer to Dr. Goff on that one. I don't know if Bridget's able to speak or not.
I can't tell, Jim, if you're still there or if you've faded away. Do you have any other questions?
I do, Mark. I was wondering, it sounded like Bridget might be gonna answer the question of.
Bridget, you want to come up to the desk? Sure. Introduce yourself too to the.
Bridget Goff, Superintendent of Schools. Brian, I think you covered most of it. I think the only other pieces, yeah, programmatically, there are music classes in there, there's drama going on in there. But also, we have our special education program of students that we keep in district instead of going out of district. And we do a lot of, we want to do some community work with them, and also to do some reverse inclusion and have that and they're doing that work in the cafeteria while there's students that are in the auditorium. So when you have a cafetorium, it makes it logistically impossible. So, thanks, Brian.
One thing I can add, having a cellist, and he's been a cellist from middle school and now in high school. And when you go to watch them play, you are sardines like this, peeking in windows and not getting seats, and it's been awful. It's been awful. And I think anybody who has somebody in the music program does know that. If you don't, you have no idea. And also to be practicing and having it your time for orchestra, and then having everybody eating around you and their trays moving around and things like that. I love the idea financially, but it doesn't make sense when you're taking away from kids' education to do that, because the point of them being in these programs is to learn and to get the benefits of them. But, just having lived it firsthand, it has been very hard for any of the kids in the music program.
That's a good point. I think if you have seen it or you have lived it, you understand why middle schools do not have cafetoriums.
Can I ask a quick question? Would you plan on using the auditorium for high school or elementary school events as well?
Yes, yeah, we've had requests in the past. We just haven't been able to entertain them. So, and we have had other people like dance teams that want to use it, so yes.
Okay.
I'd also just add, we have used the middle schools for town meeting in the past, and for other big events when the high school auditorium either wasn't available at the time or was booked. I think it's smart. I was going to talk about these things at the end, but since we're on the auditorium, I think it's smart to do the auditorium and give yourself the most flexibility. We anticipate this building to last us at least 60 years, as our old buildings have. So, if you think of it as a 60-year use, I think it's well worth putting the money into it up front. And then, it sounds like you've done some cost mitigation with eliminating some of the music rooms and used the stage, and you've sort of come up with the best package for that use. So, Jim, let me go back to you and see if that answered your question.
It does, but I would put a little finer point if I can. So in the statement of interest that we sent to the state many months ago, we listed all of the deficiencies of the current school, the Byrd Middle School and the Johnson Middle School, I might add. The cafetorium was one that had the majority of deficiencies associated with it by my count, based on the various ways that it's used between being a cafeteria and being an auditorium. And I really think this is something that we're gonna have to be prepared to explain to people, that we need an auditorium. So a cafetorium is a bad idea in my mind. I think you need an auditorium for modern educational purposes and all the things we just talked about. I won't repeat them. But I think there is gonna be that question about, but it's not reimbursable. And so I think we really do need to be prepared to answer that question and answer it in a context of, what are the real deficiencies that we have today, and that cafeteria. And when you double the school population within the combined building, it seems to me that that's going to become even, less practical a solution. So really not a choice in my mind, but I think it's going to be a question, it's going to be an issue, and we need to be prepared to speak to it. I'll move on and finish my comments. I think the design is very well thought out. I like the way that you've got the sort of neighborhood approach with the 3 teams, and I like the separation of the floors for the grades. That's really smart and good thinking. And it really looks to me as though this is a good solution to what's been a really difficult problem for many, many, many years at this point. And so I'm fully supportive of the design, and really appreciate you being here tonight, Brian, to take us through that. You do a very good job describing this, and I'd anticipate your involvement going forward as we describe it through the many forums that we're involved with, because you do a really fine job. So Mark, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Let me go to Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks, Brian, for the in-depth presentation. I know this is the 3rd or 4th time possibly you've given it, so definitely sharp at this point. But I appreciate all the detail there, and also having attended the school building committee meeting last week. I'm very appreciative at this point of the exhaustive amount of review and investigation of details that group has done. And the town really owes those 15 folks a great debt for how thorough they've been in that whole process, and to you and your team as well, Brian. I think it's really a testament to how well this has been done, and again, the thoroughness of the process that we've arrived at where we are and been able to interrogate pretty much every detail along the way. So I certainly encourage folks who have additional questions to reach out to a select board member, a school committee member, a school building committee member, a member of the school administration. And I know that there'll be further public forums, even over and above the 6 or 7 that have already occurred. And the information is out there, and we have it available. And so just making sure that folks get what they need and have their questions answered seems to really be a challenge here on out. So thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, let me go to Glenn.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and the other select board members had a lot of good questions, and Brian's presentation is really thorough. And I think the thing that I think is that I want to at least make a comment on, or maybe ask a question, is on the public information and how we're reaching out to just people in Walpole. So if you sit here through this meeting and pay attention to your presentation, it really answers a lot of my questions. So I have a clear understanding of what this project is for construction and the cost and design, all the way to the demo. And so I get it, but I'm kind of thinking about the people who don't sit through these presentations. And I know we've had public outreach sessions already, and you'll have more. But just, I'm always thinking about the people who aren't going to sit through an hour presentation, or maybe we can try to get them to sit through an hour presentation. So how do we reach the sort of hard to reach people between now and the townwide vote on November 2nd? Do you have, just could you touch a little bit on what your plans are for that, Brian?
Yeah, so typically in a project of this magnitude, we have kind of a multifaceted approach to reaching out to folks, and we kind of call it the road show. Between the MSBA approval and leading up to town meetings, we do this in many communities, and it's that multifaceted approach of you're holding larger forums. I think the last few public forums we've actually sent flyers to all residents, so at least people got the information and had an opportunity to join. And we understand that there are folks out there that don't have the technology capability, and that's something that we're teeing up right now for possibly later this summer, early into the fall, to get live in person in front of some different demographics that might have not had a chance to attend some of those other ones. And all as well, you're able to get information out. We have the project website, which is a sub-site to the school's main page. We have a project email address that folks can ask questions. There's lists of frequently asked questions on that website. We have a couple 1 or 2 page flyers that we did that are part of that website as well, where folks can kind of get a 1-page summary of the project. And I think we did one initially back in February, and we did an updated one as we started schematic design. We do a lot of work, we being Compass, with getting in front of different civic organizations, as far as getting in front of not just the town in general, but meet with this committee or meet with this department or meet with this organization and just kind of do a Q&A. We've done things where it's just, there's no presentation, and it's literally just us with the design team and the project team and the building committee members just answering questions. So that's on the horizon as well. And I think we'll put together, once people kind of back from summer vacation and we have a direction from the MSBA with kind of hard numbers, so to speak, we'll have that kind of teed up for early in the fall when people are back and ready to focus and lead up to town meeting. We've also done some preemptive things with town meeting with town meeting member groups and things of that nature. So it's really whatever the town feels is appropriate, and we'll provide as much information and presence as needed.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's an all hands on deck scenario. And I guess one other point I want to make is it's not just about reaching out to the school age parents. I mean, we want to reach out to them because they're going to benefit from this. But really, the entire community is going to pay for it. So the elderly population and maybe people whose kids are in college and have gone through the school system recently. So they're likely to support a project like this, but also they might have concerns. So we just want to make sure that, not everybody's going to be on board, but that we're reaching out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I agree, and that's typical for a process on a project like this. I mean, typically the school demographics are most engaged because they have, they're interested up front, and as it's been mentioned previously, some people haven't even kind of started to tune in, so we understand that. It's not uncommon, so our goal is to make sure that we are reaching out to folks that might not have a direct interest in the new facility, but obviously are a resident and part of the community that's going to help support a project like this.
All right, thanks, Brian. Let me know how I can help.
I have a couple of comments. I did want to mention that the Council on Aging Board has asked the school building committee to make a presentation. Anyone can come, but specifically for the seniors, will be held over at the Council on Aging sometime in September. They felt like that was a good time when people would be back in town, and that would give the seniors a comfortable place they're used to going, where they could get up-to-date, correct information, and have a chance to ask some questions. So I did want to mention that. In addition to everything else that the select board members mentioned, I am a big believer in that you've done some really smart things, one of which is set it up so that we as a town can add solar in the future. The fact that you've built it in and you're going to have conduit in place is a really great thing. Walpole is moving to becoming more and more green over time, and we have a bunch of different initiatives that are in process. So I think that's something that we as a town are going to want to take a look at sometime, probably soon after that building is completed, about taking a look at what it would take to get solar running up at that site. So I think the plan is really good. I've been impressed with the amount of information that's available on the website. I did like that you sent the postcard out to everybody in town, pretty much. And I like the fact that all your meetings, many of them were on Zoom, just due to the nature of COVID. But that information is available on the Walpole Media website. So people have a chance, even if you can't watch the meeting live, you can go back and take a look at the meeting and see what's going on, so which is great. I know that, as Glenn said, not everybody's got the time to do the research, but I think it's important as we move toward a November 2nd vote that people take some time and educate themselves, and start by going to the website, and you can also watch some of the Zoom or attend. I know I mentioned specifically the Council on Aging, but I know there's other public events that will be coming up before that vote. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to be involved and to learn all the facts. So do any of you have anything else you want to add before we vote on the schematic design? So, all right, I'd entertain a motion, Nancy.
Yes. I'll make a motion to endorse the schematic design report submission to the MSBA.
I'll second that. Again, we have to do a voice vote because we have members available via Zoom. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Mark? Aye. That's great. So now the second part of this discussion is on the borrowing term, and Jim has put a memo together sort of highlighting some of the discussion around the topic, and the proposal is for a 30-year borrowing length. So I'm going to let Jim start off if he has any comments. Then we'll go around the room and start with the select board, and then I'll see if there's any other comments.
Sure. So I drafted a memo for the select board dated June 17th, 2021, that basically outlines some of the options that are available. The cost for an average household at 20 years, which is approximately $623 a year. At 25 years, $539 a year. And at 30 years, $478 per year. Mass General Law allows the town to borrow for up to 30 years for a school building such as this one. And we've really looked at what we have done in the past, what some of the other communities that Compass has worked with has done. And just for your notes, the public library, the police station, and the COA building, we borrowed for 20 years. The fire station, we borrowed for 25 years. And the Fields project, we borrowed for 14 years. Those are some of the more recent projects that we've undertaken. And some of the towns in the Metro West area, we reached out to them. Ashland's going out for 30 years. Millis was 25 years, but that was a few years ago when the rates weren't as good. Medfield, if successful, will be going for a 30-year bond. In Norwood, for I believe it was their high school, went for 25 years. So there's other communities that have gone up the extended length. I know some people have expressed concern about the length of borrowing. 30 years is a long time to commit to something. But, the way I've been looking at this is, Mark, you mentioned, I think a 50 or 60-year building at least that we're expecting. With Walpole's luck, it's going to go maybe 100, 150 years. We've had success with some of the old buildings. Blackburn Hall comes to mind. Someone told me that the center pool was built in 1927 today when we were getting it filled and checking everything out. So we get our, the maximum life out of our buildings. So I think it'll be longer than 50 or 60 years, but that's why we're looking at a 30-year borrowing at this time. I wanted to get this to the board because I know the group that's organizing and the school building committee brought this up a few weeks ago. So ultimately, I reached out to council and I said, I believe that all buildings ultimately come down to the authority of the select board as to how long we can borrow. Council confirmed with that. It's the select board in conjunction with the treasurer collector. So ultimately, Lisa and I and Jody will be looking for some guidance and direction from you, but I think it's best to get out there and get some information for you, so myself and the finance team can plan accordingly, provide the information to Chairman Breen and Brian, so they can get the information out there to the committee and the various interested parties. So that's kind of where I am.
Thanks, Jim. Glenn, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of a shorter borrowing term, but I also think this is a pretty unique situation in the sense that we're borrowing $80 million versus a library or a police station or a fire station that was in the 10 to 20. I mean, what was the highest amount of borrowing?
I believe it was the fire station, which was about $15 million.
So $15 million at 20 or 25 years might make more sense, but $80 million borrowing, to me, I think a 30-year borrowing strikes me as probably the way to go because it's going to be a 60-year building. I had an extraordinary conversation or an interesting conversation with a young lady who told me that she's lived in Walpole for 95 years. About 30 minutes I talked to her, and she was, she used to be a teacher in Foxborough. So she had a concern about the cost, what the cost of her tax bill. And so I think somebody like that, if you spread it out over, instead of giving her a higher payment for the first, for the next 5 to 10 years, I don't know how long she's going to live for, but I mean, an 85-year-old or a 75-year-old person shouldn't bear the burden of most of the cost of this building. If we could spread it out and lower those average tax bill increases for everybody, then I think a 30-year borrowing would help us do that. So, based on that conversation, she was concerned about the cost to her. She thought that a remodel would make sense. I explained to her that if we remodel this building, that the cost wouldn't necessarily be a cost savings. And so I just think that a 30-year borrowing is where I'm looking at.
Nancy?
I think nobody likes taxes, and nobody wants to pay any more in taxes. Having gone to Bard Middle School myself, and then going there as an adult, it is not as big as it used to be. And when I was there was half the amount of kids. we have retrofitted it. We've done tons of it. There's so many layers that's part of the reason why those classrooms are smaller. I think whenever anyone goes on that tour and actually sees it, then they really do realize it. And the length of time that we've been there, we have gotten our money's worth. But it's a need, and it's something that we have to invest in. I mean, we all have children so that we can educate them and let them grow up and let them leave and move on, but they need a place to be educated. And this year alone, we've seen that our buildings, even the buildings that we thought are good, are too small. And it's something that we have to do, and it's what's best. It is a terrible timing financially for a lot of people. I love the idea, Glenn, I didn't know where you were going with her being 95. It was making me a little nervous just talking about her mortality. But you bring up a very good point. The smaller payment for her forever, however long that is
20
better.
years of what it might be, yeah.
Right, is better, that she shouldn't have to be paying a higher payment for possibly a shorter amount of time. But also 30 years. I've been sitting here elected as an elected official for 20. That's only like another 10, and it'd be paid for during that time. I mean, it goes by so fast, that, you know, everybody is going to have to, when it comes down to it, vote what they can afford. But there is also a bigger price, and it's our kids and our future's kids. So I think it's an investment that we have to make, and I like the 30 years. I like there's no benefit other than it just being paid off 10 years earlier by going shorter, right?
It's about $150 a year difference, yeah.
Yeah, and I've also seen through the years that when and if borrowing is better, we've had teams that refinance them and things like that. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna get lower than now, but I'm for it. I like the 30 years, and I think, it's an investment that we all need to make.
Thanks. Let me go to Jim.
Yeah, I think the 30-year approach is the right approach. Tying the funding to the useful life of the building makes a lot of sense to me. I also think, we got to keep the cost of the taxpayers as low as we can, and this is one way to do that. So I endorse the 30-year approach, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, and I'll just add a few comments that I have. I do like the 30 years. This is the most expensive building we've ever built, and, as is true, if we had built this building, when Noah had built their high school, I'm sure we would have got a much better price on the construction costs, and financing would have been higher because it was higher at the time. But financing is very low right now. I know that the last time we went out to borrow, we were, I think, 2%, Jim, does that sound right?
It was 1.6.
1.6%. And there's no guarantee we can get a rate like that, but it's kind of a historical low point in terms of financing. If we can stretch the payments out over 30 years at a low rate, we can match to some degree the generations of families that will send kids through the schools, and try to match that with the costs. And I agree with Glenn's point. If you're older, it's spread out so more of the people who get the benefit will be using it. I think it's also important, people have asked me, why do we have to decide this now? I think it's important to let people know our strategy for financing. Ultimately, it is the decision of the select board. We could wait till after, it gets voted in, town meeting approves it, and then make our decision. But I think it's important to tell people, here's the number, this is, we believe the number, here's the estimate for the building. So I think that's important to lock in what we expect to do. And I had one more idea, but it's gone, it left me. So let me see if there's anybody here that would like, I know, Jack, you may want to make a comment. Come on up, you use the microphone, so. Just introduce yourself for the vast audience at home.
Thanks. I'm Jack Fisher, Precinct 3, and I'm a member of the the School Building Committee. I'm not here to debate whether you have the authority or not to do this. You have the authority to do this, okay? I'm not here to debate whether it should be 20, 25, or 30 years. What I'm here to state as an individual on the committee, because the committee has not discussed this, okay? I want to make that very clear. I'm sure there are members of the committee that will agree with me when we have this discussion, but I think it is totally inappropriate for the Board of Selectmen at this time to make this kind of a decision with no public input. This is going to affect the tax rate and what people pay for taxes for literally decades. And there's been no discussion about it. And I think you need to have the discussion. I think you need to have some inputs from the public as to what the term should be and what the impacts of those different terms could be. Look at it a little bit closer to town meeting when you have a better idea of what the rates are going to be, because the rates frankly, could very well change between now and October. So I think it is, I can't tell you more strongly. I don't think that you should make that decision today. It's not necessary. We don't need a decision on this for purposes of the submission to the state, okay? And you need to give the public a chance to weigh in on what they're looking for, 20, 25, or 30 years, and you know right now what the potential tax rate impacts are going to be, and what the rate is, what the impact rather is for an average house. And let people weigh in and say, hey, this is what I think we should do. This affects every homeowner, every taxpayer in Walpole for literally decades. And we've talked, there's been no public input to it. So I can't say it more strongly. I don't think you should make a decision on this. I think it should be part of the outreach program and get feedback from people as to what they think should be the term.
Thanks for the feedback.
Okay?
Anybody else have any comments? No? Any other discussion? I see Ben is now back, so let me go to Ben.
Oh, yeah, I never left. I just had to
Oh,
see
sorry, your picture went away, so I assume you dropped off the call.
I'm still here. It's not actually the video, it's me. I'm still here behind the camera. You know? Anyway, I don't have anything to add. I mean, it's a thorough discussion. I appreciate very much what Jack just said. But I don't have anything to add. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Ben.
Just to follow up for Jack, I completely appreciate your input and value it. You have a lot of years of volunteering and giving solid advice. To me, the reason I do like letting everyone know is transparency. I want everyone to know what at least I'm thinking, and then it becomes a vote, so that they have that as part of their information when they do make their decision. So I get what you're saying, and I guess I'm just looking at it maybe just backwards, or I'm not sure. But to me, I feel like I'm being more transparent. I'm trying to learn from past projects that the questions that we would hear on the floor were about some borrowing and things like that, and they wanted more information. So, thank you for coming and saying that. But just so you know, that's how I'm looking at it.
Sure. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a 30-year borrowing length if the override debt exclusion passes on November 2nd.
I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark? Aye. Thank you, everybody who came in.
Thank you.
And again, for the people at home, check out the website on the school page about the middle school project, and Walpole Media has lots of information available over time. Are you Brenda Healy? I am. Come on up. Sorry we made you wait a little while. Timing is always unpredictable.
Hey, I'm not at home with 3 kids.
So this is Board of Health Associate Member Interview and Vote for Appointment. Brenda Healy has volunteered. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Brenda Healy. I'm a lifelong resident of Walpole. My family's been in town for many, many years. I've been a nurse for 38 years, the end of the month now. Most of that has been critical care at Norwood, Mount Auburn, and the city of Boston. I've been working in the community for a while. Unfortunately, I became ill about 5 years ago, and I went back while I was doing chemo and got my master's in public health, and I got my MBA at the same time. I'm now pursuing my doctorate degree, and I've been working with the Board of Health in Walpole now through COVID, doing the rollout on the vaccine and just helping them with what they need as an intern. I'm the oldest intern they probably have ever had. But I will be done in December, and my project for my dissertation is on improving the vaccine rates of the elderly in the community. And I would like to be on the Board of Health because I just want to give back. I want to give back to the community that's given a lot to myself. I'm very vocal when things need to be fixed, but I also like to give praise when things are going well. I like to listen, and I thought the associate member would be good because I have the healthcare part down. I don't have the environmental piece, I don't have the animal piece, and I'm sure there's a lot of other pieces I don't have. So as an associate member, I can take that time to learn and explore and see where it comes.
Thanks for volunteering. I always say to people, one of the things that makes Walpole great is the number of people who are willing to volunteer their time for the good of the town. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So let me just see if anybody else has any comments or questions.
Other than to say thanks for volunteering, it's good to have you here. Sounds like you have a lot of experience to offer, so we're glad to have you.
I hope.
Jim, any comments or questions?
Just thank you. Appreciate the volunteerism.
Ben?
No questions, but thank you for putting your hat in the ring here. Sounds like you're incredibly qualified, so really look forward to having you.
Nancy?
Also, thank you, and pleasure to make the motion to appoint Brenda Healy as an associate member of the Board of Health.
I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye.
Thank
So,
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So you need to go get sworn in, is that right? Is that how that works? Okay.
The letter, and then I'll
Okay, perfect.
take a time to meet with the town clerk to get
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
And I would like to add, my locker is still at East Junior High.
Mine too.
A lot of memories.
A lot, and it needs to be done.
With the time being after 7:45, is there anybody here for open forum? Come on up. Last meeting, we forgot to have people come to the microphone, so
Okay.
you never heard anybody who was sitting down. So.
The strict orders this time.
I'm Jen Karnakis. I'm at 16 Rainbow Pond Drive, but I'm actually here as the chair of the Historical Commission. As many of you probably know, we lost one of our beloved members, Roger Turner, earlier this month, so I'm here to ask the Select Board to memorialize him in the town, to we should have a proclamation, any way that we can memorialize him. He was a true son of Walpole. It's a big loss. For people who didn't know, he also served as the town's emergency management director. He was the vice president of the Historical Society and an influential member of the Historical Commission. He has a record of service dating back decades in the town of Walpole, including a member of the Conservation Commission, the Ponds Committee, the Sewer and Water Commission, the Master Plan Implementation Committee, the Old Town Hall Reuse Committee, and a representative town meeting member. He was known to avoid the spotlight and never sought credit for his work. He was never keen on being referred to as an elder statesman, but he was widely regarded as the authority on town history, water, dams, and pond-related issues, and emergency management. He was responsible for securing many grants for emergency management supplies and equipment for Walpole, and he was known statewide as a passionate advocate for preparing for any crisis. He was a mentor and a leader for countless volunteers associated with emergency management in the Medical Reserve Corps. And he was also a contributor and often uncredited to virtually every major historical publication and research project of the last 20 years. So I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure you all know, and for your vast audience that's watching, I wanted them to know how much Roger meant to us, to the town, and what a loss it is, and he should be commended and remembered for everything he did for this town.
I agree with what you've said, and you didn't mention Roger almost always had a camera, which was very interesting because he captured moments over a long period of time of
yeah.
historical significance and everyday life. So that was That was interesting.
That was what got me at the wake, was when I walked in and saw his Olympus just sitting on the desk, on the table there. For people who are on Facebook, the Walpole Historical Commission has a Facebook page, and Christine Cochran, who is our vice chair, was able, every time we went to a site visit, she always snuck pictures of Roger, because Roger would always be the one taking pictures, so you can see some great pictures, including when he ran for the planning board. And he said, yesterday molded the town, tomorrow decides its future, was his slogan for when he was running. So I just wanted to make sure that we do everything as a town. You know, I know it's the 300th coming up. He was so eager to work on that committee and to work and to really celebrate this town. So I wanted to make sure that everyone here paid tribute back to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd say, Jim, let's work on that.
It's not been done.
Yeah,
I think that's a good call.
There's so many good memories about Roger and what he was involved in over the years. And depending on how old you are, you'll have a bigger or shorter window of some of those things. But, you know, Roger was a real man about town, and I saw him, you know, so many times over the years doing good things for the town. So it was really nice. And he'll be missed. Okay, thank you. Anybody else for open forum? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, new business, vote to award bid contract number 2021-27, cleaning, redevelopment, chemical treatment of gravel-packed wells, the amount of $86,475 to Mayor Services, Inc. Jim, any comments?
Just recommend favorable action on this one. 4 bids were received. Rick and Bernie both looked through it, and Mayor Services were the lowest and most desirable.
Okay, and you're happy with his bid?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to award bid contract number 2021-27 for cleaning, redevelopment, chemical treatment of gravel-packed wells in the amount of $86,475,000 to Mayor Services.
So I'll second that. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Mark? Aye. So rather than my read it, why don't you make the motion, and then we'll go
I'll
from
make a
there.
motion to award bid contract number 2021-26 for the Eleanor Road Pump Station Improvements Project in the amount of $197,091 to Pride Environmental Construction, Inc.
I'll second that. Any comments or questions, Jim or anybody else?
No.
So we have a motion and a second. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark? Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the stadium event parking lot rules and regulations.
I'll second that and open it up for any discussion. Glenn, any discussion?
No.
Nancy? Jim?
No.
Ben?
No.
So we have a motion and a second. So we'll do roll call vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark? Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the Danielle Foley to use the town gazebo on Saturday, August 14th, 2021, from 11:30 to 12:30 for a wedding ceremony.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Glenn?
Excuse me. Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark? Aye.
A motion to approve the request of Paul Clerchy to hold the 2021 CAMI 5K run and 5K walk on Saturday, November 13th, 2021, starting at 9:30.
I'll second that. Any discussion or comments? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye.
I will make a motion to accept the following gifts, donations. One by Henry Scanzio to the Fire Department gift account, one by Gloria Deneen in memory of her best friend Karen LaMonica to the Council on Aging gifts, and then one in the amount of $250 from Walpole Pharmacy to the Council on Aging.
I'll second that with thanks for all those who have donated money. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 15th, 2021 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that and move right to a vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Next up, Town Administrator's Report.
Sure, just a few items to review here. COVID updates. I was going to get away from this, but eventually I will. But at this time, we have 2,117 total confirmed cases. We do have 2 active cases in Walpole. The end of fiscal year '21 is coming up tomorrow. Lisa and Jody continue to do a great job keeping an eye on all department budgets. At this time, it does not appear any department's going to need a reserve fund transfer, but if something comes up, I'll let the board know for sure. Master plan update. The planning board discussed the composition and makeup of the eventual master plan committee, the steering committee, at their meeting on June 17th. The board decided, they haven't decided the approach that they want at this time. Some members have expressed concern over the makeup suggested by the select board. Others wanted to go back to the 2010 makeup. So there's continuing talks about the committee. They did come to a decision and authorize myself and Patrick to coordinate a meeting with Judy Barrett of the various department heads and everything. And that's, Patrick Duchesne's is already starting to set that up. Patrick Duchesne is going to continue to assist the planning board coordinating the meeting dates and conducting the interviews. I expect a lot of data to be collected over the summer, and the bulk of the public outreach will take place in the fall. So that's just a brief update. I'll continue to keep the board updated on this. Hopefully, the planning board will decide what direction they want to go with the steering committee, and we can start to advertise that for people to get on that group.
Can I make a quick comment on that? I know that we gave them a suggestion of, 13 members to put on the committee, and I'm really happy to see them expand that in any way they want and change it. It clearly is, under their control. I think the important thing is to get started and be all-encompassing as they reach out, whether they're official voting members or people who are just, involved in the process. Nancy mentioned in our meeting, I think back in, a month and a half ago, about the process and how involved it was and how many meetings there were and how they looked at sort of every aspect of town life. And I think that's a great process, and I really look forward to them starting that again. I know that someone, it might have been Jack, made a comment that, it's still several years away before we need to put out a plan, I think 2024. But I really envision this taking a lot of time to do it right, and encourage them and offer my help in any way they would like to move that project forward and, make it a great study, because as you look back at the last one from 2004, so many things we've accomplished were in those plans and were laid out. So I think everybody who was involved in 2004 should be proud of what they did. And, we've accomplished an awful lot of those, goals and objectives. So I think that's a great thing.
Okay.
I agree.
Just an update on the pools. All the pools are open. Brendan is extending the hours of operation today, likely tomorrow, and if necessary, Thursday, just to keep them all open late and allow people to cool down. Open space and recreation plan. Landis continues to work with the MAPC on the draft plan. It's expected that the punch list will be completed in the near future and that the plan can be finalized before the end of the year. She's already working on a few items from the plan, such as working with Norfolk County to get them to put a conservation restriction on some of their forested land, working to continue the rail trail path that runs behind the community center to extend to Ellis, to continue past the Council on Aging and into the Housing Authority. Work with the NEF, which is the New England Forestry Land Commission, on the Norfolk Street land that allows access to the pond there for site development and possible dock and public access down there, and to continue to look for opportunities to connect the trails throughout town. So she's working on that. She's working hard. She's really taken this one on, and I'm glad to see that she's passionate about this issue. And the last item here, I have a memo from the chief that you probably all haven't even seen, dated today. The town of Norwood will be borrowing Walpole's spare ladder truck for the next several weeks as their ladder is out of service for repairs. This will not impact our delivery of service, as we have Tower 1 for our responses. He's provided a copy of the memorandum of agreement between the town and our insurance binder. This is something Norwood's lent us their trucks in the past, and their ambulances when ours have gone down, when we only had 2. So it's a neighborly thing to do. You have a great relationship with their town hall and their fire department over there. So just a heads up if people see Walpole's fire truck driving around in Norwood. So.
I think that was a smart decision we made too. Rather than take very small money to trade in a truck or an old ambulance, to keep them available as backups. And the ambulance is a good example with COVID. We actually turned that into a frontline ambulance and had operated 3. So I think that's a good idea. And we always want to help out Norwood or any nearby towns because, you know, they come to our aid and we go to their aid. And I think it is the neighborly thing to do and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm glad that we had it available to help them with, so.
That's it for me, so thank you.
Any, Nancy?
I had one thing just interesting, because I've kind of kept everybody in the loop. I was vaccinated first in December, and every 3 months, I'm part of a study that I get my blood drawn to look to see if I have gotten natural COVID and had no symptoms or anything. Well, just was tested 2 weeks ago. I'm still negative. I've never had any COVID. But what's interesting that now we're getting is they measured my spike protein for the first time. And you have enough antibodies if you're over 50 AU/mLs. I am at 1,116.3. So I found that kind of interesting, that it's definitely works and it definitely gives a response. But I know most people don't have the ability to get that information, and if they wanted to know, and somebody that it's for real, there's nothing fake about it. I just found that interesting, and so part of the study also that I'm in is I am one of those people that they will be deciding whether we need boosters or not. So just thought people that are interested in that stuff, let you know.
Great, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I've always wondered about,
Yeah.
you know, what are the real numbers and do you need a booster at some point, so. Anybody have any questions for Jim before we call it a night?
I have
Ben?
one question, Mark. Yeah, thanks. Jim, I had a resident reach out to me and ask about cooling stations for folks in general who may not be going in the splash pad, for example. I didn't know if there was a plan for that at maybe the COA or another location. This person said they'd done them in the past, and so I was wondering if there was a plan for that.
So the answer is, we haven't had anybody reach out to us directly, but I can certainly ask Carrie to extend the hours there and have Dawn get some coverage the next few days at the COA.
Yeah, maybe I'll pass that along, the information to you, and maybe you can reach back out to them. But I don't know if there's a need there or not. But you know, if there is, then obviously we should meet it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
that's not an issue. Rick Matson's still sitting here, so we can work on it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Ben. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded. Glenn?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye. And I will make a comment that this Zoom has worked out surprisingly well. And I'm glad that we've tested it out and used it, because it will be nice for those who can't attend our meetings who want to participate. So kudos to anybody involved on our end, Aoife, Jim, Patrick, and Walpole Media. So it worked out great. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Night.